Hey everybody, how's it going? Real quick before I get into anything else, I just want to let y'all know that I did an extra podcast yesterday with Zach Meyer, who's an amazing illustrator, and we had a great talk talking about a lot of the things that are going on in the world right now, how it's affecting us as illustrators, as people, our country, everything. We just wanted to have a genuine talk. So I hope you go and check out that podcast with Zach Meyer. He's an amazing artist. I also talk about Plebeian, which is a new art podcast company that I'm going to be working with and doing some cool things with the podcast to try to get more of the arts out there and more art podcasts and that sort of a thing. So that's going to be really cool. So please check out that. The information is at the beginning of my podcast with Zach Meyer. So please do that. And wow, I just had an awesome talk with Sterling Hundley. He is an amazing artist, super talented dude, very inspirational. I feel super pumped and inspired by our talk. He's such an awesome guy as well. So I don't want to go on too much further. I want you to enjoy the episode of the podcast. I hope everyone's doing well. And without further ado, please welcome Sterling Hundley. Okay, we're rolling, man. How's it going? we had a little bit of a setup issue, but all's good. So it's awesome to finally be able to talk with you, man. It's been years. Yeah.
Yeah, you too. Been following your work for a number of years, and I remember the first time I saw your work. I was up in New York, and it was the cover of a Village Voice that you did. Some I forget who it was. It was in a bathroom stall, and just. When you're starting to work professionally, there's not a whole lot of things that make you kind of stop in your tracks and really look at something. And this is I'm not saying this out of obligation or anything, but I stopped and really studied the work. It's like, it's got to be digital, just airbrush. I couldn't figure it out, and I still can't figure it out.
Been thrilled. I'm trying to think of what that was. Oh, I know what it was. Was it it was a guy sitting on a toilet with his shirt off and he's like, it's a kind of a gnarly, I think it was an article about Scott Storch. I can't remember what the name of the magazine was, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. That was one of those covers that's fun to do because they gave me enough time and I got to really push myself and do cool things. But you know what it's like in the illustration type of work when they're like, hey, we need the illustration yesterday.
Yeah.
You have 2 days to do it. So that was one of them that I felt very proud of because I actually got to spend some good time on it. I wish I had more like that, but
that's cool. You try to find the few pieces that you're proud of. And I'm sure I'm like you and every other artist where you've got a stack of things that you don't show to anybody if you don't have to. And metaphorically, that stack is like that tall, and then you have the professional work that meets a professional standard, and then you have pieces that you like, and it's one piece every 6 months that everything syncs up, and it's like, I can look at that, and it's got staying power, and I figured out a lot of problems within it, not just the client problems, but my own, and those are the things that I get the most excited about in illustration.
The one thing that and again, I'm this is in total sincerity. I was at the Society of Illustrators show in February, and I'm not going to lie, it was one of the most disappointing shows I've ever seen. The work was very low quality, in my opinion. Okay, this is just my opinion. And people maybe will get upset by hearing this. I'm sorry, but I'm just being honest. I went with some illustrator friends of mine. I was in town to hang out with my agent at a party. It was with Greg Manchess and a bunch of people. Had a great time, but I wanted to see the show. And I went in there and I was just like, what is going on? It was weird. The only pieces I took photos of were your pieces, and then I think a few pieces by Ed Kinsella. And maybe one other. I can't remember. It's been a little bit, but your work, it was crazy. It was like one of those things where I'm so happy that your work was there, because I've never gotten to see your work in person. I've got this book. I've got it right here. One of my favorite books. I look through this all the time. It's just, your work is just beautiful. And the thing that draws me to your work so much is that it's very well thought out. It's very planned. I can tell that you're probably a very difficult person to be married to. You're very anal. This is very, very, very planned, thought out, very constructed work. And also your ability to layer in just textures and all these different elements. I stood in front of your pieces at the Society of Illustrators, just been like, it was worth it to come just to see these pieces. And I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass. I'm being serious. Like, I stood there with my friend Zach, actually. He was the one that came with me. And we just stood there. I took a ton of photos of him. I tried to get as close up. I'm like, this is awesome, dude. And it's just, it's rare for me to be that inspired by illustration. I think that it's hard to be shocked these days for me. There's so much that's just mediocre and just blah, 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 blah. And I find myself in the same thing. Like, you know, I have crazy deadlines, and I'm like, sometimes I just got to get this one out there, you know? Yeah. And I wish I had more time to be more thoughtful and to do like real artistic pieces. And so I'm envious and jealous sometimes. I see, you know, some of your pieces, and I'm like, man, that is what art is, man. There's so much there, like the Lincoln pieces that you did, and just gorgeous work. So I just wanted to put that out there, because, and nothing against the Society of Illustrators. I support that organization. I think it's great. I was just shocked. I felt like the quality was so low. I was confused. It felt like a different kind of show than what I was expecting. So your work and Ted's work was like just like a breath of fresh air. It like saved me basically when I was there. Like, oh, okay, this is fine. I feel good about spending $15 coming in here or whatever.
Well, I appreciate it. You know, I got to see the show too, and you know, Ted's a good buddy of mine. He actually studied with me for a good bit of time here in Richmond. I had he and Leslie Herman and Jeffrey Allen Love were in the studio at the same time. Richie Pope came through there for a second. I taught Richie at VCU, and Ben Sack, if you haven't checked out his work, I know I'm missing some big ones that came through, but those guys in particular, Leslie, Jeff, and Ted, they were all kind of going through, and I just had my kid, and they were down in the studio just pushing each other like crazy. And it was wild. That was back when the art department was running, was the name of the school that I was kind of managing the studio of. And the first year those guys went through that career mentorship program, Leslie and Ted both got gold medals in the professional show.
Yeah.
And the following year, Jeff got a gold medal in the professional show. It's just like, it made me feel great. And Ted is, he's brilliant. He really is. And
oh yeah, he's awesome. He's so good.
So he runs deep. But thank you for the words. That book was definitely something I had some time on. And, you know, I'm sure you've kind of done a bit of research here, but I'm not both feet in illustration anymore. I'm doing a number of things, and they're all keeping me quite engaged. So that book came along, and when I take a project on, it's got to be the right project these days. And it was a good project for me. It was hard. It just about killed me, but I wanted to have a collection of my work where I was proud of, you know, most of it. And there's some duds in there too, but you do 33 illustrations for a book, and it's just going to happen that way. But the vast majority of the book I'm quite proud of, and I'm glad that it connected across time and space and found you, and you found it.
Oh, dude, it's beautiful. It's really awesome.
Thank you. But as far as the show and what's happened in illustration, I mean, it's, you know, I'm also a professor, and I teach students coming through, and there is a pervasive aesthetic that always runs through illustration, whether it's now or then or whenever. There's the work that dictates fashion, and there's work that follows fashion. And, you know, I'm in a place in my career where I'm no longer dictating illustration fashion. I'm just not that invested in it. I'm just trying to create quality work. But the rest of it, you know, the thing that I struggle the most with any show is going and seeing digital prints at a show. And now you're talking, it's not that I'm anti-digital, I use it all the time, but it's the difference between seeing an image of something and an artifact, and wanting to see paint texture and surface and realize that it's not just what you see, it's how it was made and the surface was painted on. That's why I go to museums, is to see where not just the mastery of artists, but where did they screw things up? Where do they make mistakes? How can I learn from that? And
that's awesome.
Surface is such a huge part of any show. So I think that when I go to shows these days, if it's mostly digital prints, it's just like, it looks exactly the same as it did online. What's the point? So that's my standing on that. So
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's weird though. I mean, it's funny because I've had like a love-hate relationship with digital, where, I mean, I prefer painting traditionally. That's what I started with. That's what I love to do when I'm not doing commissions for things. And the only reason I got into the digital work was because it was early in my career, and the deadlines were so insane that my friend Joe Bloom, he's an awesome artist as well. Him and my dad were like talking me into like, you got to get a Wacom tablet, and I was totally against it. Thought it was cheating. Didn't think it was art, and eventually I was getting so overwhelmed with. I was doing a lot of acrylic deadlines, and so I got one, and I did my first deadline with it, and I started playing with it. And I'm like, oh wow, I can actually create an image that I'm painting. This is way different than what I thought it was. I thought that it was, when you work digital, you're just going to look like everyone else, and it's just going to have like this whatever. And it sort of was like that at the beginning in a way, because, there's a learning curve. But I found that as long as I was keeping honest and with myself and my work, my techniques, and not abusing a computer, and actually, I even do underpaintings digitally, and I do crazy color palette things, and similar to how I would with acrylic or with oil. And as long as I do that, and I basically try to keep it as traditional as possible in a digital format, I was able to find a voice with my work and develop that way. And it's very important to me. I always tell people all the time, try not to abuse the computer. Use it as a tool. And it took years, I think, for me personally to be able to develop brush techniques and different things digitally, where I feel like a lot of the digital work that I end up doing feels similar enough to my traditional work. Has my voice, my thumbprint. But I completely understand what you're saying, because when you go to a show like that and it's all digital, you might as well have an online gallery. You know what I mean? Because I guess you're not really going to those shows. You're going to those shows mostly to, hey, what's happening with illustration right now? You're not really going to those shows being like, I mean, it's hard to explain, because like I remember when I first went to Society of Illustrators, when I first got my first piece in it was an acrylic painting, and I went there and it was mostly traditional work, and I remember it was unreal. So many amazing oil paintings and so much just amazing art. And so I totally get what you're saying, because it's just not as inspiring for me personally, even though I'm submitting and doing digital work. It's different, because for me, illustration, the digital work I don't mind doing as many digital work as possible for illustration. That's why I keep the traditional stuff mostly for personal or for private commissions,
Yeah. And to articulate that point, man, I'm not anti-digital. I got my tablet here, and the cover of the book that you were talking about, this Lincoln book back here, all 100% digital. So I'm not anti at all. In fact, I'm going through right now learning the Unreal Engine, so I can build digital worlds. So I don't care how things are done. My point is that when you get down to seeing something in person, if I'm going to see it in person, then it's, I want the same as if I was a designer and I had foil and debossing, and there was something beyond the surface. It actually had depth and texture. I just want to see things that are tactile and tangible. And
yeah,
you know, the thing that turned the corner for me, I guess I was pretty much a purist, if there is such a thing in illustration. When I started out, I wanted to draw and paint and make things with my hands. And I had a piece that I did years ago that was a screen print of George Washington that started off as a drawing that got scanned in, painted over digital flats, and then screen printed. And the moment it was screen printed, it's like it's a real boy, it's a real thing, you know. And it just, so
that's cool.
Like I really could care less about how something is made. I'm just talking about the actual in-person experience for me. You know, I can see an image online, I can see an image in a book, and it's not going to differentiate from what I see hanging on the wall. So why bother putting it in a frame, having a show? with the exception of what you're saying, which is you can go to the shows, you can meet people, you can see kind of what's coming and what's next. And so yeah, that's my only point on that. But gosh, I mean, I just finished this huge commission with NASA where I was designing a autonomous UAV course for them, and that was all done in Illustrator. I mean, a tool's a tool. So anyways.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I mean, I wanted to talk about your work in that way, that you're talking about like that tangible original piece and that's got the textures and everything. And one of the things about your work that, besides, like when I look at your work, it's sort of so completely different on so many different layered ways. It's hard for me to explain, but it's so different than the average type work. Whereas you seem to incorporate so many different, almost looks like different mediums and different things into just one piece, where it's like, you know, like one, and I could be wrong, I don't really know exactly your technique, but sometimes I look at your work and it looks like gouache, and then there's like some pen in there, maybe there's some I don't know, it looks like washes with acrylic. There's so many different mediums and textures, whereas I'm used to just like, hey, I'm going to do an oil painting, or I'm going to do an acrylic, you know what I mean? And so I'm curious about your approach that way. I mean, obviously, you look to me when I look at your work and Ted's, which makes sense that you guys have worked together, and you guys seem to have a real passion, and it's inspiring to me, a real passion for exploring the possibilities within mediums and how they can work together to create something cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that goes back again to kind of loving getting my hands dirty, and I mean, I learned techniques from Step by Step magazine, if you ever remember those things.
Sort of.
Yes.
Is that where they teach you how to draw like a turtle or something?
No. That was.
I was like, I remember some old stuff, but
design school or famous artist school. But no, this was actually Step by Step graphics is what it's called now, and it would just walk you through Gary Kelly's technique. Here's a still shot of this. Here's this. Everyone's got tutorials now, you know, that they look at. But back then, that was really my education. I was in my university program, which I'm an alumni, where I'm a professor now, and it's changed dramatically. But I just wasn't getting good information at the time. I had one professor that was, I call him the truth, because he was telling me the truth. His name's Robert McGinn. But I found my way to these magazines, and it would just walk you through, like, here's the brush, here's the paint, here's how you do it, and learning things individually. I would learn gouache, and then I would learn acrylic, and then I would learn oils, and then I would learn colored pencil and pen and ink, whatever it was. And I eventually got to a place where, you know, you start to realize that each medium has its own property, and they have their own strengths and weaknesses. So, for instance, I consider gouache to be like watercolor, where it's it remains a live medium. You can always go back with water and reactivate it. Well, acrylic, by comparison, is a dead medium, and you put it down and it's really hard to move it, if not nearly impossible. But if you use those together, the way that I do, I put down washes of gouache and then go back with acrylic, and the water in the acrylic mixes with the gouache and reactivates it. So I'm mixing my color on my painting, not on the palette. And there's just something to that in my brain makes sense. And as far
as hold on a second. So you're doing washes with gouache, Okay, so you're like doing like sort of like a light underpainting, and then you're going in with acrylic on top, but you're not pre-mixing color together. You're like, how is the process of mixing color like with the gouache? Like that seems almost like a muddy type situation. I mean, it's very interesting.
Here's something I'm working on right now.
Okay. Ah, that's beautiful, man.
Oh, thanks, dude. So it started off as a complete value-based pencil drawing.
Okay. That's
And
gorgeous.
oh, thanks, bud. So after that, I go through with a color like this. I don't know if you can see it. I think I've got it. Yeah. So the border is the original wash color. I think I've been doing so many demonstrations. This little silly face here gives a. Oh, sorry. So pencil with an acrylic wash over it seals the pencil, softens it too.
Okay, that's cool.
And then I start washing. I choose complements, so I go oftentimes blue and orange. If something's hot, it's a highlight. It gets a pretty saturated wash of a gouache orange over it, and if it's in the shadows, it gets a saturated wash of blue gouache. I then go back with that same color, that unbleached titanium white acrylic, once the gouache is dry, and I just start painting the highlights in. And what happens is it mixes in the highlight area with the orange, and that color happens there. And as it transcends down into the coolers, into the shadows, into the cools, it mixes there too. So I'm not mixing anything over in the palette. It's all happening in pretty much real time, almost like alla prima oils wet and
yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Wow, that's cool. That's so awesome.
It's just one of those tricks you find, and
then you just keep. What's the steps after that? I mean, you keep building up. I mean, you've got to be doing some pre-mixing though with some things on the side, right? Or because I mean, after a while, the piece is mostly acrylic, then, isn't it? After you've done enough layers on top.
Yeah, and then I might go back and reestablish the shadows, like go kind of flats with the shadows and things like that. But I try to establish that I'm pretty much painting traditionally, going from the value of the pencil to your lights, so dark shadows to highlights, and that's as old as time, right? So
yeah.
But I do pre-mix. Yeah, I guess for the Lincoln book, I pre-mixed a bunch of paint because I had 33 paintings, right? So
yeah,
these are just acrylics that were kind of ground colors and things I had as an option there. So
that's smart. That's awesome.
Yeah, this trick from Mark English, the late, absolutely great Mark English.
Oh man, he was awesome.
Oh man, in so many ways, just remarkable. So
yeah.
But yeah, so it's and that's one process that I use. And talking about materials, I mean, I've got a closet back here filled with everything from collage paint chip samples from the hardware store to, there was a period of my life where I was trying to paint with wire, like rust, and I ended up having to figure out what chemicals to use. I went through experimentation with muriatic acid and aluminum and steel and tie wire and plaster, and found a way of kind of painting with wire and plaster that was super interesting and naive and raw, but it created an absolute freaking mess. So I was like, I can't sustain, and the paintings were like 50 pounds each. So, but anything you can think of that makes a mark. I love going to the hardware store. House paint is like the best stuff to paint with, completely flat and super cheap. So yeah, anything goes.
House paint.
Oh man, house paint. I've got 6 cans of house paint over here that,
and now isn't house paint like super thick? Like you'd think you'd have to like thin it out quite a bit, or you just use it for flat, like underbases to build off of, basically.
Yeah, painting a lot of flats with it, but then it's latex, so you can just dilute it with water, but mostly just going in with flats and big shape, anything else, and then kind of softening edges after that. So
it's pretty awesome, man. Damn, like you've got some pretty lucky students, man. Having someone, because like seriously, I mean, there's there's a quality about your work that I think that draws me to what you do, where, you know, I again, like I look at your work. I was looking at this book again this morning just to refresh and look through some things. It was so cool too that you added these pages of like your sketches and that sort of a thing in there, just show some of the process. But like just man, it's hard to even explain what I'm trying to say. Like even let's see, some of these older illustrations that you had in here, like they were more almost caricature-ish of like Prince and Santana and whatever. I don't know where those are now, but even with those, there was such a, for me personally, when I saw that stuff, it was such a high standard of what illustration can be, because, you know, like for me, when I was getting started in this world of illustration, I was always an artist as long as I can remember. I just always was drawing, and that's all I ever wanted to do. But when I was in my early 20s, I was writing music and I was recording albums and I was touring the country, putting out albums. And, you know, the only artwork I was doing at the time was designing T-shirts and album covers and for the bands I was in. That was my life. It was like the band guy for years. And then once that was done, I wanted to figure out what to do with my art. And the caricature thing for me personally was something I was always just naturally, I don't even know, it just naturally was something that I would able to do, like fairly effortlessly in a way. But I had to push myself further to obviously become better at it and everything. But that was something that I just held on to all the time, ever since I was like maybe 10 or 9 years old. And I started noticing illustration, like caricature illustration, like C.F. Payne, Roberto Prada, and Daniel Dell, and, you know, James Bennett, a bunch of these guys at that time period. I started seeing it everywhere, Steve Broad and all this stuff, and I started realizing like maybe that's what I could do. Like I could do that. So that became my school at the time. So right. I would rip out pages from magazines and just do I taught myself how to paint basically by looking at C.F. Payne and different artists like Roberto Prada, knowing nothing about what they're painting on, what kind of paints. Like, what can I do with these mediums that I have to try to emulate what they're doing and get to that standard and that quality, not knowing what I was doing at all, obviously. And the crazy thing is besides that kind of perspective of my worldview there with caricature illustration, not knowing that there was this other massive world of illustration out there as well that was just beyond, like, you know what I mean? Like, because at first, when I first started, that was just my focus, because I was like, I can do that, so I'm going to focus on that, get good at that, be able to do that. And then the crazy thing is it worked, and I started to becoming an illustrator. I started getting the work. The whole time a learning process, being self-taught basically, and then, you know, as I've gone on throughout the years, I start meeting other illustrators and artists like you. So when I see someone like when I saw your work, I remember for the first time just being like, nah, like, what's happening? Like, this is a completely different approach. Like, it was just refreshing, and it was different. And that's what's cool about, for me, is that you use everything. You use distortion. You use so many different like explorations of value and temperature. Like you're all over the place. Like even when I went to look up some samples of your work to share with people that I was going to talk with you, your whole website right now is completely different. Like, with tons of work that I knew of before, it's not even there anymore. You got a whole new. It's like you're constantly like evolving. So. I don't know. I guess I don't even really have a question. I'm just like, I think it's inspiring. I guess what I'm trying to say is that you kind of opened up my eyes personally as, oh, you can actually do like work different ways. You can actually use only 2-3 colors in something, or maybe 2 colors, and do a really cool illustration. It doesn't have to be full color. And, you know, I don't know if that makes sense, but but there's a few pieces I've done in the past that were totally inspired by stuff I saw that you did. And I was thinking, oh, like I did a piece for Rolling Stone years ago of the Black Keys. And they only gave me 2 days to do it. And I wanted to do something really cool. And I was like, I don't know if I had just gotten your book or whatever, but I'm like, I'm going to try doing only a couple colors, like maybe 2 colors, and see what I can do. They didn't tell me that to do that. So I was like, not sure what they were going to think.
Yeah.
But it was cool. I experimented, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. And they liked it. And so it was all good. But, so anyways, just throwing that out there because I think it's really cool, you know.
This is so weird, man. So something I did influenced something you did, which something you did influenced something I did. So I was talking about that Lincoln and Whitman cover. That was influenced by, you had something where you had like red underpainting. You had a series of portraits that you were working on. And I started that painting having seen that work of yours. So
that's fun. Was it Bernie Sanders maybe or something?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sanders painting.
Oh,
was
cool.
Like gray over red. And it was just like, that is wild. So man, it's funny. So, well, I'm glad we talked. This is good. But, you know, the thing about teaching and students and gosh, my career, where it's gone, I'm just curious as hell mostly. And I want to live a pretty big life. And, you know, I've started a company called Legendeer, which is dedicated to embedding artists back in the world. We've taken expeditions out to Yosemite and the New River Gorge and up to Banff, and did a workshop in Bogota, and where else did we go? Zion, and you know, and I've gotten involved with just inspiring, amazing people who are leading creative lives, have nothing to do with illustration, but they are creative in every capacity that you can imagine. And I've gotten to take part in some real life, adventures and experiences that are shaping my perspective. So regarding my website now, I'm not soliciting any illustration work. So I
makes sense
to focus on my gallery efforts right now. And that's where I want the work to come from and what people are seeing there. And each new exploration it starts with a question that I don't have the answer to yet. Right. I'm not doing things that I know how to do. I want to do things that I'm curious about. And I look at everything I did in illustration and everything I do as a painter it's like a scientific process where you have a thesis or a hypothesis and you're trying to prove or disprove that theory through the work that you make. And, you know, each time I kind of fail, I learn something, or I get closer, I learn something. And what I mentioned in the beginning, those very few pieces that I'm proud of have always come at the end of a long concerted effort where I'm trying to solve a really big problem. And every piece I get, whether it's client or personal, I'm using that as an opportunity to kind of get paid to move closer and closer to my own problem solving. And when I arrive at it, it's always like I never know what it's going to look like, but I start to figure it out as I go. And then when I figure it out, it's an aha moment. It's like, I did it. I figured out how to bring these materials together or explore these themes or this idea or to paint big or to whatever it is. And it's not just art. It's like the businesses I've started, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's just like, well, that'd be interesting to do that. Mm-hmm. So that's where it all comes from is curiosity and wanting to have a unique fingerprint in this world. And all that is very much a deliberate thing. And you talk about voice in your work. Someone sees your work, they know it instantly, right? Mm-hmm. And those are the type of artists that's the type of artist that I always wanted to be. And those are the types of people who I deeply admire. And when I see that someone is doing something that goes against the grain or is hard and challenging, I instantly connect with them like, yes, that's evolution, not just of an individual, but of ideas. And that to me is super inspiring. So, yeah,
no, I think that's in a way I relate to that, just being an artist where I feel like I can't really turn it off in the weirdest of situations. And sometimes it's terrible. Like you're having a serious talk with your wife and, she's upset about something, but like, you're like looking at her eyes or something she's wearing or how the lights shining down and everything, and you're thinking about how you would paint that, and then she's like, "Did you hear one thing I just said?" I'm like, "I would use yellow ochre, and some ivory black, and maybe a little bit of cad red to like make this color," and that's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Well, that's the reality, man. We have our way of seeing the world as artists that, you know, there's times where I'm fully invested in drawing and painting, and I could compare myself to my normal standard. It's like I just see things differently when you are attuned and in sync with the world around you, and or not, you know. But what I tell people in regards to that is, you know, my mind is rarely where my body is, and I'm always thinking in the future. I'm thinking about what's next and what's happening.
Yeah.
And so to be present was one of those things that I recognized when I had my kids that was a huge problem for me. Like, and there's nothing worse than being absent as a father. You know, even if you're there, to not be there is immensely problematic. So I formulated the question: how could I marry my ambitions as an artist with the challenge and want to need to be there with my family? So the body of work that's on my site right now is called Familiar Interval, and I decided to embed canvases throughout my house and to try to focus on my family and create a body of work that was it's about time. I was keeping a journal where I just got rid of my cell phone for a couple months, and just started working through just drawing, because when I draw, I'm present. And if I'm drawing my kids, I'm looking at them, I see them, I acknowledge them, I'm in the space, I'm not in my studio. And very few things have done that for me in my life. The only other things that make me present are when I do sports, I play basketball, things that require you to react in real time. And that's been the thing. Can I marry the most important things in my life with my professional ambitions? And that show is kind of the proof of that. So that's where it came from.
That's really awesome, man. That's really cool. Yeah, that's definitely becomes a challenge when you mix like your with your family life with your professional life. I mean, it's weird. Like for me personally, I was married for 14 years, and it ended very badly. And when that happened, you know, I have 2 daughters from that marriage. So, and I was doing everything I could at that time to, you know, to take care of everything, you know, with my art, take care of my family, everything. And when all that just came crashing down, it was really difficult. My art suffered, everything suffered for like months and months and months. And it's amazing, like how, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, because of that experience and you know, it was almost like a wake up call, or like a chance to reevaluate myself as a parent, as an artist, of what can I do so that this kind of stuff never happens again. Like that. And I'm not even saying that was because of my art. Nothing was because of my art. But everything came apart. Everything did.
How could it not? I mean,
yeah. And so it was basically like completely, like everything was almost like what's been going on in the world right now. Everything was burned down, and I had to start over. And, you know, thankfully things turned out way better. You know, I ended up meeting someone that's amazing, and she happens to be an artist, and we've been happily married for almost 6 years now. Daughter number 2 is coming in just a couple weeks.
Wow! Congratulations.
So I have like 4 daughters now, which is crazy. And what I ended up doing with my art is, the cool thing is my wife is an artist. She's an oil painter and super creative photographer and poet, and you know, so there's like this immediate like connection that's just like on the same page. Like, you know, there is no misunderstanding who I am and what I'm doing and what I'm about, and same way with her, which is really cool. But what I try to do with the family is, as much as possible, work just during the day, no nights unless it's an insane deadline, and then I'll just make up extra time, and I try not to work weekends. But I definitely try to, like what you're saying, like marry it all together in once, one thing, because it does affect everything, and it's I think it's as an artist, like it's easy for us to go crazy, like we're overwhelm and like it can be, it can be so much anxiety and all that goes along, especially with what's going on right now, like with being locked up for a couple months and not knowing what's going on and all that kind of stuff. There's so many different things that can affect every single person emotionally, mentally. I think it's cool that what you're doing. Like, I'm curious about that. So you're putting canvases around the house and just like they're just like just up like on little easels around the house, or you just grab them, kind of work on them. Like, how does that work? Because that's an interesting idea. That's pretty cool.
Well, it's not as invasive as that. I mean, we've got a pretty. I mean, as much as family life is normal, we've got a normal family life, and so I call them embedded canvases, and I had to develop the technique to make that work, and I've been using layers of packaging tape. As weird as that sounds, I found it on this Johnny Cash piece that I did years ago as an illustrator. And it was always the most authentic, unique approach that I completely invented. I didn't get it from anybody else. And with that illustration, I was trying to find a way to show Johnny Cash's youth, his middle age, his later years, and create an aggregate, like a compression of those time. And so the embedded canvases they're on masonite. They're really thin. And I'm just doing drawings and markers. I've got a bunch of these paint markers and things that are pretty badass, by the way, the solid state markers. I would do, so the first part is recognizing what you want. And what I wanted was to be with my family, to make artwork where the question is, can I produce something that had value and legitimacy with them, not in the studio? Because a big part of what you're talking about and how we suffer as artists is when we go to the studio, we're rarely just thinking about the thing we're making. That your brain is just turning over and you're thinking about the world and the situation, life, and everything else. And it can be really overwhelming to have to sit still and live with yourself. That can be a really, really hard thing about being an artist. And so I've been trying to figure out how to stitch those things together. If I had 5 minutes and my son was in the bath, and, this is when he was just a baby, he's playing in the bath. I'm like, well, that's 5 minutes I have where I'm not having to do anything. He's playing, we're engaging some, and I might pick up one of those embedded canvases that's in the bathroom and draw for 5 minutes. Well, that gets covered over with a new layer of tape. Everything's underneath. It's a blank canvas, basically, next time I go back. And these canvases developed over the course of 2, 3, 4 years. And I finally had to take them back into the studio and start tearing away layers. And what it revealed was lost memories and lost moments and things that, some things I would keep, some things I would sacrifice, some things so the paintings, these layers of tape go down, again, years deep. So maybe 10 layers sometimes. And what it yields is an aggregate of decisions and moments, and it's abstracted and it's strange, and I want that, right? I want that, and then it's my job to take it back to the studio and to paint into it, and that's where I have to go back and actually take that stimulus and use design and clarify. And but
wow, that's so cool.
So then they become big paintings, and some of them become encaustic. I had to figure out a way to make them archival. So I used encaustic wax. I heat it up, and they're embedded, and the wax kind of gives it a softness. Like the deeper it is, the softer the image, and the closer to the surface, the sharper it is. So it has that nostalgic feel to it with that too.
Man, that's so awesome.
Well, thank you. But all of it's like figuring shit out, just trying to say, well, it's a new problem. It's not archival. How do I save this?
Yeah.
Add to it. So, but
that's so cool.
So being a parent, you got limits on 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 30 to draw.
Oh yeah.
How do you take advantage of that?
I'm thinking, it's funny because I'm thinking about that now because like we're having a daughter. We have a C-section scheduled for the 30th of this month, and I'm super excited. We have a 2.5-year-old right now already, and then I have a 13-year-old and an almost 17-year-old. So it's a little bit crazy here sometimes.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about that. Like, man, what's gonna be like having another newborn with just life right now and work and just and I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet her and everything. And then I try to think about my wife as well, because basically ever since we had Sienna, our 2-year-old, she hasn't been able to do much art at all.
Right.
But I'm the one that's I'm the one that's working. That's she's a stay-at-home mom, which is great. That's what I want anyways. And she works so hard. She's like the best mom in the world. But I always feel bad that she doesn't get as much time to be creative. I got her an iPad actually, and she's been doing she's not a digital artist, but I got it for her because I'm like, trust me, it's really cool. It's really fun to paint on. I don't know if you mess with the iPad at all, but
oh yeah, I love it. Favorite tool.
Dude, it's so much fun. Yeah. So she starts doing these just awesome. The same thing you're saying is like she takes those little moments Sienna's taking a nap and she'll whatever. And so she's been doing like really cool art, and it's been really cool to see her doing things again like that. But I wanted to ask you, when you were talking about the Johnny Cash, were you talking about this piece here?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So this is like flat matte like tape that's laid over like a board or something, and then you just
all those pieces are
yeah, and that's like acrylic or gouache or whatever.
Yeah, the final stage, it's I think I started off as the first layer was cardboard, and if you look in the microphone,
yeah,
like I actually ended up cutting all the way back down to the structural pieces of the cardboard. Like those are the ribs of the cardboard underneath. You see that in that little passage there?
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
So that's
just awesome, man.
That was just really lucky, right? So it wasn't planned, and I remember that piece really well. I was working for Tyler Darden, who was the art director at Virginia Living Magazine, and I turned in the original illustration. He was like, "Oh, it works," and I hated it. Like I hated the original piece that I submitted, and I had an extra day on my deadline. I was like, "I'm going to go back and redo. I love Johnny Cash, and I want to pay tribute to him." And so that happened. I just saw the cardboard and packaging tape I had in the studio were the same value and the same color. It's like, wow, can I layer these things up and see what happens? And so then that Bojangles piece on the same opposite page there was the same process. And it's just something that always stuck with me. It's like, I want to go back to that. And when I started doing more personal paintings, I didn't know where it was going to go, but they gave me a process that was the yield, the outcome was just really interesting drawings where I didn't have full control.
Yeah.
And, then I kind of was able to weave a concept of time into it, which is the central core of all the work I'm doing right now. It's about time. So, but that's the piece. Yeah, that's cool.
That's
the book.
Oh yeah, no, that's so cool. That's one of I love that piece. I'm a huge fan of Johnny Cash as well. And that's so awesome, man. It's literally inspiring talking to you about it, because it's cool. That's why I love doing this. I love to be able to hear like that behind the curtain type talk of creating art, because we all as artists have our own ways of doing things, and I think it's just awesome because even though you do things completely different, it's like a language that we understand. So it's really fun to be able to talk with an artist. Like this is the first time we've ever talked in person. We've talked online, but I feel like I've known you forever. Like there's I just, you know what I mean? Like, so it's really exciting and inspiring to hear you talk about your work that way. It's so cool, man. It's like a living organic technique, which is just, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it's been a long time knowing what the problem is and not knowing how to solve it, but not giving up on things, and that's what I would say from all of this is, I was taught as I went through school, I learned to illustrate. And at that time, and throughout my career, you're hyper focused on solving other people's problems. You're like, well, okay, I've got an idea.
Yep.
Here's the text, and they give you limits of time and audience and space and content. And within those limits, we are expected to be creative. I love that. I love that problem solving aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
But my question then was like, well, what happens when someone else doesn't frame the problem for me? How do I frame my own problems? And can I apply these same concepts and ideas, not just to illustration, but to painting, not just to painting, but to writing, not just to writing, but starting a small business, running a school, living my life. Like every time I explored these ideas, they continued to scale up bigger and bigger. And now it's just like, you can design your life,
Mm-hmm.
and if there's a problem in your life, as creatives, we have the capacity to recognize, give those problems a name, and then figure out not just the singular way that we know of solving them, but how do we think creatively about different ways of solving them. And
that's awesome.
The stuff that's going on in the world right now, I don't, you've mentioned your past marriage and the fallout from that. And I think we're being disingenuous as artists if we don't acknowledge that the world's in a state right now that it's deeply unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
It's riddled with hypocrisies and complexities that doesn't mean that the root of these things are not true. It's just it's become a very wicked problem, has been for a long time. The pandemic, stay at home, we see these things as separate things, and they're all intertwined. I mean, it's like this powder keg that was ready just to go, and you have people.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm out of work. I don't have a job. I don't have a way to support myself. The government is failing, but we can't trust the federal word that's coming down from the president. Whatever it is, has made for a perfect storm and perfect moment for just significant conflict in the world. But what I would say is that, just like with everything that you talked about with your past marriage, you have a moment of assessment, and you have a moment of clarity to say, maybe we can rebuild something. And I mean, that's not my nature. I'm not an activist. I never have been, haven't had to be. And I think there's something to be said about that. There's a lot of people who are in situations where they have to be. So I'm doing my best to listen and pay attention. I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with all the methods, but there's no denying that there is conflict in the world that's coming to some type of head right now. So I hope, Jason, that what comes out of this is not just the chaos, but it's a rebuilding in a meaningful way. So
100%. That's very well said. Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely a wake up call for everybody right now, because I think in a lot of ways, I think we've had it too good. We've had it too good for a long time, where things just like there was never like this reality that things could be even close to what they are right now. And it's like, no, like nothing is certain, nothing is forever. And this is a wake up call. This is like, hey, no, listen, we got to make some changes. That's just the bottom line. We've got to make changes. Some things are just downright immoral and wrong, and it has to stop. And we have to do better in many, many ways, as a society, as a culture, as a country, government, as people, And so I think that's awesome that you said that way. It was really cool.
I had something to share with you real quick that was is pretty poignant. So during the semester, Virginia's making national news right now. Our governor has just announced that the longstanding Confederate statues are coming down, at least the Lee, General Robert E. Lee statue. Mm. I'd taken my class out to draw that statue 2 years ago because it was already part of the discussion then. So we need to go pay attention to what's happening. Let's go and draw and think about this and have a conversation. And I've got a book that I kickstarted a couple of years ago that I finally have in hand that's going out to my backers. But one of the drawings was that statue of Lee. right? And I spent today, I was like, man, what can I do in these books because this is about the effect of time on everything. And so I sat down and I actually took the original line drawing, which was very simple. I don't have that by comparison, but I captured the governor's speech and kind of drew and painted over top of this thing. And my plan, if I can pull it off, is to go into everybody's sketchbook who was a backer and actually have a little screen print overlay of the drawing as it was and what it's becoming. And it's not a political statement on my part. It's my role as an artist to document the time in which we live.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to, it's not my nature to politicize anything, but we certainly can bear witness and capture the moment. So.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, that was awesome, man. I really appreciate you sharing that. That's really cool. I've got some fan questions that I want to get to, if you're up for that.
100%.
All right, cool.
Questions from fans.
So this first question is by Lars Eric Robinson.
Hey, how you doing, Sterling? I really like your style a lot. I like how you find your shapes and how you include your drawing style in your paintings. Really unique. And one question I do have is this Legendeer program that you have where you spread. Basically, I'm really interested in that. The way I notice you don't have that organization down here in Florida, and I'd like to help you with that if that's possible. I would love to be more involved with it and spread the arts down here a little bit more. So anyway, I always enjoy Jason Seiler's podcast on different people that he interviews, so it's really awesome. And that was one of my questions. So yeah, do you ever do anything digital? Is all your stuff traditional? It does look like most of your work is traditional, but what do you feel about digital work as well? All right, thanks. Bye.
Well, cool. We answered the second question already.
Yeah. And
the first one, Legendeer was, if I can talk about the origins of that real quick, because that's part of the answer.
Yeah.
Jason, I'm like you, I've been through some catastrophic things in my life. Everybody does. That's life, and we're all going to face things that humble us and change our perspective. So I was working at that school with Ted and Leslie and Jeff and a bunch of other folks, and I really poured my lifeblood into it. I thought that was going to be my future. I was kind of tagged to take it over after John English was going to leave it. That was kind of the plan. So I was pretty much fourth in line, somewhere in there, and that all came crashing down in a spectacular way. And all of a sudden I was like, man, I just poured years of my life into someone else's dream and vision. And this is right at, I can't remember if my daughter was, my wife was pregnant yet or quite how the timeline worked out. I think this happened before that. And I was really devastated. I said, I'd already started to pull away from illustration back then. The first time I left, I retired from illustration. And I said, what can I make? Like, I want to make my own thing, and I don't want to be relying on someone else's dream and vision. And I went down to my table downstairs, and I laid out a bunch of note cards, and I started just writing down, like, what was important to me. And I had 50, 60, 70 note cards laid out flat. And I said, okay, what's the common denominator between all these things? And I was able to boil it down to 4 categories. And I said, okay, it's health, mind, body, and spirit. If I'm not healthy, then I'm dead or I'm no good to anybody. Relationships was another one. So it was family and friends and colleagues. Then it was business, and it was art and education. And then the final was recreation. And I said, if those are my governing principles, am I staying true to those? Well, at that point in my life, it's like I'm unhealthy. I spend time with my family, but nobody beyond that. There is no recreation, and my business of art has dominated my life. So I said, is there a way I can build something where all of these things are addressed, and what would that look like? So Legendeer started off as a question, and the answer became this kind of Facebook group where we had monthly challenges, which grew into drawing some really spectacular people. My business partner, Adam Paquette, from Australia, he lives in Berlin now. Jeremy Collins, a world-class climber, Paula Aquino, going down the line, just, remarkable people that are into super creative lives. And it took on its own life and its own shape and its own form. And we were running these expeditions, which were super high risk, low financial return.
Yeah.
So I put that on hiatus for 2 years and decided to double down on my own. Like the working philosophy is the embedded artist. And where can you put yourself to be affected by culture, but also to affect culture over a period of time? And that's where the project with NASA came from. I went down to an unmanned Dragon crew launch in Florida, and that was spectacular. And that led to be able to teach that as a class at VCU. I got invited to, I created this position as artist in residence at the hospital. And I was in the operating room with burn patients and clinicals and cardiothoracic, and created some of the most exciting drawings that I've ever made, meeting the doctors, the surgeons, the nurses. And so, Lars, to answer your question, we don't have anything in Florida right now, but I do see the future of Legendeer as being something where it's much more of a locally organized group and meetups and challenges where people are able to collaborate. And look, hit me up. I'll get my email out to Jason. You can certainly send me an email. We'll connect that way. But we have a group right now called Embedded Artists. We're on Discord, and we're just addressing things that are problems in the world. We have weekly sense-making calls where we're just sharing our thoughts and experiences. And I'm taking this week off, but it's been intimate. But anyone's welcome to get involved. So if you join up on the legendeer.org mailing list, that's the best way to kind of get that information and those updates. But would love to connect, Lars.
That's awesome. This is a question. There's no audio for this one, so I'll just read it. This is from Rebecca Davey. Hope you're both well. What inspired Sterling to become an artist? What made him choose his career path? Also, how does his approach starting a piece? How does he approach starting a piece of work? I look forward to hearing the podcast. Okay. Thank you, Rebecca. I mean, we kind of answered some of those a little bit, but.
Well, the two things that I want to mention there. So I started, you go to art school, and Jason, it sounds like you didn't go to art school. It was all
I kind of did. I started, I was already working professionally as an illustrator for a handful of years. And I did go to art school for like a blink, thinking that it was going to help me become faster, and because that's what I was stressed out about, the deadlines. And then I ended up just stopping and just going full speed back into what I was doing. So,
yeah. So, and it blows my mind. I mean, I had the good fortune of going to a university, a 4-year program, going through some of that training, but really, even people who go through art schools, there's so much self-education that happens. So, Rebecca, my start actually where I was going with that. One of my biggest complaints about the academic world is they will quickly dismiss animation and comics and, illustration. There's things that they look at that are not considered high art. And that was a pervasive attitude through other schools, other departments. And I grew up on comics. I tell students, look, your first love, that's part of your DNA creatively. You can't, deny that. And you can choose to go a different direction. You can choose to take parts and parcel from those inspirations, which you should do. But to deny it and say, well, I grew up playing video games or watching manga and animation, and those things are not high art. It's like, they are impactful. They are meaningful. They are a huge part of who you are and what you do. But you have to grow and mature, and you have to dilute your influences. And you dilute your influences by looking at more influences and being very selective with what you take in. So I grew up on comics. My problem that I'm trying to solve right now is how do I bring paint quality and the visual language of comics together? That's what I'm pushing towards technically in paintings that I'm making. I want to bring low art into the world of high art, and I want to, champion that. So
that's good.
So comics, and then I started airbrushing T-shirts. I loved airbrush, and I picked up all the old video game magazines before we had all these incredible systems and everything else. So video games, comics, airbrushing T-shirts. We had the airbrush stand at the theme park, and then we had the caricature artist in the other stand. There was always this competition between them, and so I mean, all that stuff is a huge part of where I started, and to deny that is it's disingenuous. So geek out on whatever you geek out on, and bring that into your work. But that's where my career started.
Have you ever? That's awesome. Have you ever heard of Phil Hale? You know Phil Hale's work. Yeah,
I had a chance to meet Phil real briefly, but huge fan of Phil's work.
Yeah. That just reminded me a little bit because I'm also like, grew up on comics and I've dipped my toes into doing some kind of, I've done some kind of noir style comic painting stuff that I just love doing. But Phil's work is when I first started seeing his work in graphic novels, I was like, okay, yeah, that's awesome, man. I saw a few of his originals. I saw one when I was in, I think, London. And then I saw another one at the Society in New York once. Just randomly happened to stop by and saw this awesome piece on the wall. And I think it was actually two separate huge pieces put together to make one. It was kind of interesting. He's awesome, man. He's a really cool artist.
All those same pieces in that was Johnny Badhair probably. I think he was working on that stuff at that time. But yeah, I mean that's right. There's a number of artists who are pursuing those ideas. So, it's like I love the song "Old Country Road," right? So I'm in class maybe 10 years ago, and I'm trying to tell people, like, look, the more opposing the ideas are, the more interesting and attention grabbing the dynamic when they're brought together. And I was like, you've got rap and you've got country. I said, someone's going to find a way to bridge those genres, and it's going to happen. People are like, it's like, all right, just wait for it. But so painting and comics, or you name it, if you have multiple interests, explore those things, see if you can stitch them together, and the result.
Well, exactly, and I think that's exactly what Alex Ross was doing as well. Because you've got. Before Alex Ross came, I mean, there was a few people, but when Alex Ross, basically, I kind of think of him as like the Norman Rockwell of comics. Like he was able to start to bring like more like this realistic, yet still very comic book feel to the work that just brought it to another level. And also as an artist, it's like I said, I grew up in comics, and I the funny thing is for years I didn't even really read the comics at first. I loved the artwork so much that I just was drawing. I'd buy them for the artwork and then copy them. Yeah. And then I eventually started reading. I'm like, oh, this story is awesome. Like I can't believe I didn't read this until now. But then Alex Ross comes along, and then you're just like, whoa, okay. Now this is like, it's like a movie almost. It's turning it more, and then of course, then the movies come along and you're like, what? So it's I find it interesting too, that the MCU is as huge and the movies have done as well as they have. And I was thinking about this, like why, what's going on, and what's happening, and why are there's so much, they're finally getting the movies right, and they're finally, feeling like the comics that I loved when I was a kid. Then I realized the friggin' directors are my age.
So they books.
It's like they are me. Like it's like the directors that are making these movies now it's like, yeah, we've always wanted to see these movies, and now we can make them, So I think that's pretty cool, because that's a whole nother art form, is taking that, those, like what you said, it was like more of like a lot of people look at it as a lower art form, but then elevating it to like a much higher place, because, like it used to be where comic book movies were, kind of like tongue in cheek and a little cheesy, and even Batman '89, I love that movie, but it's kind of cheesy in some ways, but I still love it. Like, it was great. Tim Burton's is awesome in that movie. But now we've got actual superhero movies that will make you cry. Yeah. That will they bring out the story and the emotion, and it's like, so I think it's definitely an art form that can be explored and pushed into almost any direction, So it's pretty awesome, man.
I had a comment came through that was pretty telling. I was in a meeting at the university a number of years back and had an administrator come into the meeting, and just casually they were like, "Can you believe that they have a comic for required reading over the summer?" And the response was like, "Well, what comic was it?" And she said, Mouse. It's like, have you read Mouse? I mean, you're talking about a remarkably important story told in a very meaningful way. I mean, and you'll get the same mentality where people get so close-minded about, like, oh, video games will never be art. It's like, really?
Yeah. It's like the biggest industry in the world, basically.
And well, beyond the commercial success, but like true artistry. I mean, the impact and the immersion and the capacity of where things are going, it takes away the possibility when people are dismissive with ideas like that of what things could be. I mean, you're looking at, think about virtual reality and augmented reality and where those things have the potential of going right now. I've been working with the hospital, as I mentioned, and like what my job has become is not just to be the artist in residence. I call myself a creative investigator now. And I'm trying to find ways to bring technology into the hospital to improve efficiency and client and patient interactions. And I've been talking to the Children's Hospital. I want to take the technology from the Mandalorian, these giant
that's awesome
screens, and I want to go to long-term inpatient care at children's hospitals and say, let's create an entire floor where we can change the background every week. And these kids are they're no longer bound to the limits of the halls and the fluorescent lights, but they can actually go to space and they can go have these experiences that are truly interactive. And I mean, who's to say what is possible?
That's a great idea.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
So that is awesome. Yeah, that's a really cool idea.
I've got that pitch out there right now. They're excited about it, and I'm trying to figure out logistically. Like they're building this like $350 million new children's long-term care hospital. It's like, no, I want the top floor of that to be life-changing for these kids. I want them to be excited about being there as much as they can be. So,
yeah, that is a really, really cool idea. That's awesome, man. I have another question for you from Juan Gastelum. So it's an audio question. So let's see what Juan has to say. Juan, what do you got to say? Let's see. Come on. Oh, it's opening. It's taking just a bit here.
No worries.
Hello, Sterling. Hello, Jason. I have a question regarding painting and sunlight. I've been dealing with lots of questions for clients that want to put their paintings, the paintings that I provide, into walls that have direct sunlight. And also some client wants to paint a peach on her balcony. So I am wondering what technique would you recommend me to use? Thank you very much. I would like you to mention this sunlight thing regarding to painting and what issues do you find common as things to use, things not to use, and recommendations in general. Thank you very much. Awesome work, both of you. Take care.
Great. Thank you, Juan. So I don't know that I am the best model to answer this, but if I have a problem like that I'm trying to solve, it's been addressed. It's been solved before. I would say that the first place I would turn is to muralists, right? I would turn to places where you've got people dealing with direct sunlight and exposure to the elements. And I think that you're probably going to end up finding that the answer is some type of external house paint is going to be something that if you can use that is going to be kind of weather tested and light tested. There's also ways of framing the work and using different types of glass that are going to have some type of UV protection on them. So you get into that thing like, do I put a painting under glass? Certainly drawings are often seen under glass, but if that's truly the concern, maybe that's part of the first step is address the UV exposure. Trying to convince your clients not to put them in sunlight is part of it. But at the end of the day, when you sell a piece, it's in their hands. They can do what they want with it. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, you can give them some kind of tips to good caretaking. But that's where I would start. I would start with the foundational materials, and that includes the support as well. So just using good process, good technique. I was going to say aluminum is, you can get into, I forget what it's called. It's a certain type of aluminum they make signs out of, but it's supposed to be the most archival type of base.
Yeah.
Use.
David Kassan uses that.
Yeah, David does, right. And I'm drawing a blank now for what it's called. But the aluminum doesn't hold a lot of heat. I don't think that it would be problematic in the sun, but it's not leaching any type of chemicals into the paint. So start with the substrate, start with the materials, do a bit of research on that. UV protection, encourage your client to keep it out of the sunlight in the first place. And,
yeah.
Beyond that, it's good luck. So,
dude, years ago I was in a show, and the particular piece that I had in the show was a watercolor painting I did. And it was so funny because I went to the opening, and they had my painting, like they had these windows at the one end, and the sun was just beating, and this is like a 1 month show, and my painting was already there for like a week, just every day, just bam, the sun on a watercolor painting. And it was just funny because this was like a gallery, and when I went into the show, I was like, why is my painting like it's gonna be blasted? Watercolor is not gonna, it's gonna totally mess up the painting. Yeah. Like, but how would you? I mean, it's a gallery, like. Yeah. Yeah. And I was trying to get him like, can we switch at least maybe not have a painting there, move it somewhere else, switch it with that crappy oil painting right there, whatever. Like,
I was hoping.
Yeah. It's just crazy. I've got another question from Munya Vomo from South Africa, who I want to go hang out with and go shark diving with.
How amazing with that?
I want to go cage diving with great whites so bad. He says, is there another book in the works? If yes, what's the working title? What is it about? And when can we expect it?
So this is as an art book. So I've got a few books right now. The answer is yes. And again, this is kind of not so much a plug as an apology. This is the book that's coming out now. This is Time 1, and it's just a collection of just kind of intimate sketchbook drawings. And
can you move it over just a little bit?
Yeah. I'm going to get you a decent page here, but
okay.
So just.
Oh, cool. Okay. Oh, nice. Like still life sketches and stuff like that. Just drawings. That looks awesome.
Thanks, man. More of like, again, time was the focus. I'm trying to find a decent one here, but all those were, just compression portraits, as I call them.
Oh yeah, that's nice. That's fun to do. That's really cool.
Yeah, so
that's very cool.
That's a Kickstarter book that is way overdue. It got caught up in some crazy politics with the import tax and the trade wars. Got caught up with the breakout of the COVID thing. Yeah. Then it got shipped from China to New York, and as soon as it got here, I put it in its own quarantine for 3 weeks. So it's like a year overdue, and I hate so much that people have had to wait, but it's the book.
It happens. Yeah, I've got a couple commissions right now that I feel terrible about because it just things happen and it gets pushed back a little bit, and it's not easy sometimes. You start getting things built up, and but that looks amazing, man. That looks like an awesome book.
Jason, I'll send you one too, Jason. You got to get your.
Oh, that would be sweet.
It's being put out through Ad House Books, so I'm getting everything sent out to the Kickstarter backers this week and next. And then I think by the July 1st, it should be available for distribution. So taking care of the backers first, and then it'll be out there.
That's awesome. There's one last question here from, say this name right, Anil Alson. Hopefully I said that correct. I think they said they're from Istanbul.
Oh, great.
That's pretty cool. So let me push play here.
Hi, Jason. Hi, Sterling. Can you guys talk a little bit about old art versus new art, or something like art that you did when you were developing your skills back in your days, learning the craft, versus what you're doing professionally now, and that sort of stuff. It would be great if we could see stuff like that, if we could see some examples, samples. Yeah, that's my question to you both. Have a great one. Take care, and much love from Istanbul, Turkey. And stay safe. And Black Lives Matter. Bye for now.
Thank you so much for that question, and I appreciate also what you said at the end of that. That is true. Black Lives Matter, and that's awesome, man. And I thank you for the question. Sterling's going to show some stuff, and we're going to answer the question. So thank you so much, and I hope everything's going well in Turkey. It's so awesome. That's one thing I love about doing this podcast. And just before I started the podcast, talking with a bunch of you on Instagram Live, for me, it's so cool being, coming from North Wisconsin, growing up there, where it's not very cultured. Didn't see the ocean until I was in my 20s. Moved to Chicago when I was 18, and finally found myself around, a diverse group of people. So it's really cool to be living right now where we can all talk together, hang out together, talk about art. And so I really appreciate you sending the question, and I appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for sending questions today. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. It's always exciting. I've been able to teach online for a long time now, and just every time I have an online class and there's folks from other places, it's genuinely exciting. And so thank you. So look, I'll show a few things here. I told you I was into comics. So first of all, this is something I did in middle school. I think my mom probably helped me with it, but this was like a middle school piece. It was for the newspaper.
That's awesome.
Back then.
And for those that are only listening to this, it's like a headless horseman drawing. A horseless headman.
But there's got to be a horseless headman out there if there's a horseman, right? So
that's funny.
That's good. So this is I love looking back. I was a huge Todd McFarlane fan, so I was copying all of Todd's old comic books. So
that's awesome.
And there's this one.
That's so funny. I used to do that same thing where I would draw them like that and then cut them out, and that's so funny.
I love it. This was back in '89. This was The Rocketeer. Dave Stevens, Cool. So '89. Let's see. I'm 43, born in '76. So '89, I would have been. Is that right? 13. I was doing that stuff. So
yeah.
More Wolverine. I don't know why. Yeah, again, why they're all cut out, but anyways. So that, you're talking about old art, stuff for high school, and like Jason, I was always an artist. There's never a time where I was not an artist. I grew up, my mom was an artist, and my dad was. My mom is an artist. Both my parents are still around, thank goodness. And my dad was an entrepreneur. He's written 4 novels. He started, a half dozen businesses. And I am the product of those 2 people very much. And we grew up looking for Native American arrowheads and spear points. We traveled around the West, and my dad collected. He was like a treasure hunter, a relic hunter, and we dug up old buttons and swords. And I shouldn't say I never dug up a sword. I dug up some old Civil War buttons and artillery shells with my dad. So I grew up with that aesthetic of rust and rocks and dirt and being outside all the time, and all that stuff. That I'm showing about old art versus new art. It's just those seeds of ideas are planted so early on, and you just build, and you're kind of left to your own devices to explore your own interests. But where things are versus where they were, gosh, that book that you have, Jason, I think that came out, it might have been 10 years ago now, and that probably has worked on 20 years. So it's got some old art, and some of it I think for me still holds up, and some of it doesn't. But I'm the new art's on my site, and the drawings I've been doing lately. I'm not even sure if it's worth showing these, Jason, but I've got a show up in a gallery Nucleus in Portland right now. And I'll just show 1 or 2 of these things, but these are the most important drawings that I've done. Aside from the ones of my kids, but this is in the operating room.
Oh, wow.
And just trying to capture the surgeries and, getting into situations where I'm meeting the family and the kids who are deeply burned and going through these horrible experiences. It's been rattling and challenging, but that's kind of my call right now is to put myself in situations where I can be affected and I can be effective. So, but we'll see what comes next. So,
yeah, that's incredible. That's intense as well. Jeez. So again, thank you everybody for your questions. This has been awesome. And this is like one of my favorite talks I've had in a long time, man. This has been really, really cool, man. So it's been awesome talking with you. I want to show you some fan art that people have done of you. So for this last week, some people all over the place have been drawing you. So let me see if you see this.
It starts with the chin, I'm sure. Oh, that's awesome. That's a beautiful drawing.
This is by Waleed Shihab.
Waleed, that's fantastic. Real quick, I shared a bunch of photos from. I used to wake up at 4 a.m. And go to this mountain that was an hour away, and I was hiking up and I'd run down it. So that photo shoot was from up on the mountain in one of my favorite mornings. So that's back before quarantine haircut hit, and I like that haircut. That's a great drawing, buddy. Really like that. Great angles and lines, and fantastic.
Yeah, he's been pushing his style. He's submitted a few to the podcast, and he's pushing and changing style quite a bit. It's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I love the angles. I mean, that's kind of after my own heart. There is just finding ways of taking reality and owning those shapes.
Oh yeah, for sure. This is cool. This is by Jonathan Groot. And are you familiar with Nicholas Uribe?
I was just going to say he's following Nicholas.
Yeah.
Doing the limited values right now.
Yeah.
Too cool, man. Yeah, when I went to down to Colombia and had that week-long mural painting and embedded experience down in Bogota, I got to go visit with Nicholas, and he's absolutely one of my favorite painters.
Oh, he's amazing.
Working right now, and what he's doing for the world of art is bold, it's brave, it's timely, it's important.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I love your limited values here in the palette. And as I said, it always, with me, starts with a giant chin. So
here's a fun one for you. I'm too sexy for my shirt. Yeah. This is by Juan Gastelum. He had one of the questions, by the way.
Juan, yeah, got my hairdo going. Yeah, that's about right. That's about right. Got a North Face tin out there. Fantastic, man.
I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. This looks like some kind of critter under your arm, and then it looks like a mouse in a race car.
Yeah,
like driving by.
Well, the squirrels. So one of the things that my dad did when we were growing up, he would take us out on these. I say take it on these, but it's probably one or two survival trips, and we would go out with a .22 rifle, and we wouldn't have any food, and so we'd go out for the weekend. And I was raised. My dad grew up hunting, and I was exposed to that. Didn't have the heart for it, but yeah, we would try to catch our dinner, and we went hungry. So I know what it's like to be hungry, and so. But we ate plenty of squirrel growing up.
Yeah, so did I.
Nice.
This is by Mark Davey.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Look like Thanos.
Well,
sort
of. yeah, and like the Thanos of the forehead, It's,
yeah.
But it's funny. That's I don't know if that's deliberate or not, but I think it is. I think that's a reference to this cover too. The split down the middle. That's great.
Oh, that's probably, yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Thanos' forehead. That's me.
That's hilarious. This one's pretty funny. This is by Juan Cesar Warrens.
Man, what a great drawing.
Oh man. Definitely pushing that form, man. Yeah.
Great.
That's awesome.
Was that the same one that asked the question?
No, no, sorry. This is Julio Cesar Warrens.
Okay, great. Beautiful pencils in there.
Yeah. That's a good, really nice technique. This is a watercolor from Dave Watson.
Dave, I appreciate it, man. You make me look pretty svelte in that one. I like it. Thanks for not beating me up too much. Great.
You look like this reminds me of, I don't know why, but it kind of, well, I mean, I know why. The shapes and everything. This looks like, like football cards from like the 70s or whatever.
Yes.
And then you flip it over to the back, and there's like the photo with their helmet off, and then like all their stats. That's what yeah.
I need some stats.
Yeah. Don't do drugs and yeah.
Super cool.
I love this one. This is by Blake Loosely.
Jeez, man.
Pretty cool.
That is tough. Really well done.
Yeah, you almost got a little bit of Clint Eastwood in there.
I'll take it. I'll take all what you can throw at me. My name, Sterling Clinton Hundley. I went by Clint all the way through high school.
Oh.
That's what my parents called me by middle name. When I went to college, like, I want to change everything. I'm going to go by Sterling. It's a much more artistic name, and it's one of those things I was embarrassed as a kid. And then, every time I'd go into roll call, they'd say Sterling's like, oh, it's Clint. So I decided to step into it and go by Sterling. But that's
interesting.
That's a great drawing. Can I get copies of these drawings at some point?
Yeah. I'll email them to you.
I'd love to share them out. These are great.
This one is by Jacques Lemanier.
Fantastic too, man.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Jeez.
Yeah, really good cross hatching.
Yeah. What a talented group you got, man.
Well, this has nothing to do with me, man. These are that's one thing I love doing about the podcast is I thought of it early on when I started doing it is I want to give artists out there a chance to partake in the podcast, be a part of it in some way. So it's not just me blabbing around with some other artists, and this way people get their art shown and we can talk about it. And so I think it's really cool. And so every week I've got people from all over the world. I have no idea sometimes where they're from, but a lot of regulars, which is cool. So I start to get to know some of these artists a little bit, which is fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Now this one I think is You Being Born. I don't know. No, this is by Dominic Zeilinger. It's supposed to be a paintbrush, but that is not what I thought when I first saw it.
Well, I got my mind went there too, Jason. I was like, oh my gosh. But I think that there's a duality to that. Born from art. Yeah, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
It's a funny caricature too, man.
Yeah. I've got something here to share with you afterwards.
Okay. This one is by Louis Alosa. All
right, Louis, fantastic, man. Got my eyes, got my forehead.
You're gonna start wearing some low-fitting hats now.
Well, it's getting worse in quarantine. I was sitting there, I've been wearing hats for like 2 months, and finally got my wife to cut my hair. But yeah,
well, that's what I did.
I'm sure the forehead's it's growing. So
yeah, I had my wife cut my hair too. She's never cut hair before, and I asked my daughter, my 16-year-old, if she would do it, and instead she gave me a makeup makeover.
Nice.
But my she literally she was like, "Can I put makeup on your face?" I'm like, "Sure, whatever." But yeah, my wife cut my hair for the first time, and it was kind of funny. She did a good job though, actually.
Yeah, mine too. It was actually the second time she did it, and she stepped out for a second. I grabbed the shears to get closer to the back, and I cut huge chunks out of the back of my hair. So it doesn't matter. Oh, there you go. Nice.
So this one is by Lars Eric Robinson. He's the one that had the first question.
Great.
But yeah, I think this is a really cool piece.
It is, man. It is. I've got my a pony back here too. So it's love horses. I always have, and I love drawing them more than anything. Horses and dogs. So that's great.
That's awesome. Cool. That's it. Well, thanks so much for everybody for sending the drawings. That's awesome. Am I back? You see me?
Yeah, I got you. Hey,
okay.
I want to say thank you to everybody who took the time to draw those. I'm flattered and honored, and man, what a cool thing. So truly, I respect the time that you took. This is my good friend. Haven't talked to him in years, but Doug Chaka. This is his drawing he did years ago. So, and then I have one that Chris Payne did, which I don't have. I don't know where it's in my folder back here. But
oh, that's awesome.
He brutalized me.
Yeah, he did one of me a couple years ago. It was pretty funny. It was cool to get a drawing by CF Payne.
Yeah, the man, the myth.
Yeah, it was a surreal experience for me personally, because he was one of those illustrators that inspired me to I want to do that, and I was really inspired by his quality and his work. He's one of those guys that I consider him like the Rockwell of caricature illustration, Yeah. And then, in 2015, I was asked by ISCA, which is the caricature organization that throws a huge convention every year, and I was asked to be the main speaker at that event. And then CF Payne was asked to do like a workshop that year. So it was really cool that I got to be like we're both in it together, and it was just like, wow, things have come together full circle. And I still have the poster. They made a really cool poster with my work and Chris's work, and then I got to meet him in person for the first time. I'm like, yeah, finally.
I tell you, man,
he's such a cool guy.
He is, and I spend the summers with him at the Illustration Academy. It used to be longer, and now it's kind of some overlap. But I had a chance to throw the baseball around with him. It felt like the right thing to do. I brought a mitt, the ball, and I threw the ball around with John English, and then Chris Payne, and that experience you had getting to open up for that conference where Chris was also a speaker. Those are the types of validations that you have to recognize and acknowledge when they come. And I had a chance a few years back. I studied with Mark English at the Academy as well, and he and I became dear friends over the years, and just had the luck and the good fortune to share the stage with him in Kansas City. We gave a 2-person presentation to the Gilded organization, and that was just, what it meant to me to be able to share in that experience with him. You can't put it into words. So I'm glad with one of your heroes. So.
No, it's pretty cool, man. That's the it's one of those things that for everyone that's even listening to this and watching this is like every single one of us are people. We all have dreams. We all, and I really truly believe that, you can, achieve so much just by doing it. Get up and do it. And like, I was, man, what was it? I was watching, this is kind of weird, but I was watching, old Fear Factor videos last night with my daughters, and they think it's a great show. We were watching it, and Joe Rogan had this episode with, the Marines and the Navy and the Air Force all coming together, and the Army. And it was a really cool episode because they're all kind of being competitive with each other, and but they're all still, one group. And it was really cool. But the Marine said something where he's like, "We're the first to go in, the last to come out." And I was like, "That's so cool." And my girls thought I was a total dork because I said, "Yeah, when I was in art school, I should have called me the Marine," because everyone was like, always asking me like, "How is it that you're doing what you're doing?" Because they were like impressed with my work, but it was like I'm the first in class, the last to leave. I'm and that's the way that I live as an artist now. Like I would continue, with deadlines and everything, and I think that's the way you're going to succeed as an artist. Is not only just like a strong work ethic is really, really important. It's not just having an ability to draw things. It's there's the passion and everything that goes into it, and I think that it's great. I'm so excited and happy to have had this awesome talk with you because you're someone that I think totally embodies all of that, and it's really inspiring and it's really cool. So thank you so much, man. This has been a really cool talk.
I really appreciate the platform, but more than anything, just the chance to get to talk to you. It's cool. We'll have to follow up at some point. Away from the podcast, but I'll leave with this statement, spinning off of what you said. So my first dream in my life was to be a professional basketball player, right? And I grabbed that dream when I was really early and really young, and I poured my heart and soul into it. Now, my body had different plans for me. It said, you kind of haven't worked too hard to be average. And always in the background, I had artwork. But what I would do as a basketball player is I would wake up, I'd go to the gym early, and I'd get there before anyone came to school, and I would practice. And then I would go to school, and then instead of eating lunch, I would practice. I'd go to the gym, and then I'd go to practice after school. And then after practicing it, I would stay and I would practice. And I have always been driven in whatever I'm interested in. I think if you can identify what you're interested in, just love what you do, that a lot of that passion, that dedication, and motivation, it pushes itself. And Jason, I have no doubt that seeing your work, that there's a direct correlation between your talents, your times, your ambitions, your effort. Those things yield results, but you have to have a faith in yourself that comes long before any validation comes. So just be interested in what you're doing, pursue it, and have faith that you will be creative, smart, and you will find your path. That's it. That's awesome. Thanks so much, man. And to everyone out there, be safe, be smart. These are crazy times. Just, man, spread the love, and we'll talk to you soon. All right, brother.
You want answers? Get the truth! Shall set you free! I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!